Hello. In this video, I want to introduce an influential theory in development economics called the Rostow Stages of Economic Growth model. This model, proposed by Walt Whitman Rostow in the early 1960s, presents growth of countries as a linear progression towards higher and higher levels of economic development. And Rostow divided his model into 5 distinct stages. Although the model might seem intuitive, careful thought will probably convince you that the model is overly simplistic. For example, the model does not account for the nonlinear and complex growth paths that many countries have experienced. Also, the model assumes that all countries follow the same exact path to development, which is not true historically. Nevertheless, the model remains a useful tool when thinking about and trying to understand economic development. It does point out some of the challenges that countries face, but again, it's too simple. Anyway, here's stage 1, traditional society. This stage is characterized by economies heavily dependent on subsistence, agriculture, and limited technology. Economic activity is largely driven by rigid social structures, and significant investment of resources is devoted to agriculture. An illustrative example might be Bhutan before the 1960s. Bhutan was a landlocked country wedged between China in the north and India in the south, and up until the 60s, Bhutan was a relatively isolated nation with an economy deeply dependent on subsistence farming and forestry. The majority of the population lived in small communities and engaged in agricultural practices that had changed little over the centuries. Economic activities were focused on survival rather than commerce or industrial development, with most goods being produced for local consumption. The society was structured around traditional values with strong religious influences affecting daily life and governance. There were few roads, no formal schools or hospitals, and limited interaction with the outside world. This isolation helped preserve its traditional way of life, but also meant that economic development was slow and largely non-industrial. However, in the 1960s, Bhutan began to open up and started to adopt development plans, including the creation of a national assembly and the introduction of modern education and health services, as well as the development of roads and other infrastructure. This was the beginning of Bhutan's transition from the traditional society towards the second stage, preconditions for takeoff. All right, so stage 2, preconditions for takeoff. The second stage occurs as societies start to develop more organized production and exploit new technologies and infrastructure. This stage sets the groundwork for sustained growth, often spurred by an external influence like colonization or perhaps global trade. Stage 2 leads to stage 3, which is called the take-off stage. This is a critical phase in Rostow's model, where rapid industrialization begins, leading to sustained growth in specific industrial sectors. The economy experiences structural changes as manufacturing replaces agriculture as the dominant sector. As an example, over the last few decades, Vietnam has transitioned from a primarily agricultural economy to a hub for manufacturing and technology. Significant economic reforms have led to industrial growth and modernization. The development of sectors like electronics, textiles, and automotive components, combined with a surge of foreign direct investment, illustrates Vietnam's move through the take-off stage. Another illustrative example is Ethiopia, a country that was once known for its agrarian economy, but is now rapidly becoming an industrialized nation. Stage 4, less important for us, but still, is called drive to maturity. After takeoff, economists experience expanding industries and technological development becomes more intrinsic to economic growth. The economy diversifies, innovates, and improves in efficiency, scaling up to produce a wide variety of goods and services. And that stage leads to stage 5, H of high mass consumption. The final stage is marked by a shift from industrial to service sectors. Economists in this stage see high incomes and widespread production of consumer goods. The focus is on services, quality of life improvements, and advanced technology. To sum it up, the Rostow stages of growth model has many limitations, but remains a useful tool in understanding economic development. The model helps us frame our study of how countries develop economically and the challenges they face along the way. Thank you.